It's always super close in Barcelona. Well, it is in qualifying because it's a very technical circuit. In the old days, of course, they used to test there a lot as well, but it's no different today. Everybody knows Barcelona well. They know the mix of corners, and it is still incredibly close. Qualifying perhaps not quite as important as it used to be. It used to be virtually impossible to overtake in Barcelona. Since they got rid of that chicane last year going into the last corner, it's a much better circuit now, a much freer circuit, and we saw more overtaking last year as a result, so that's a good thing. So we went into the 2024 race with a lot of question marks around various teams. The basic fundamental platform is that the Pirelli tyres are the hardest in the range for this race. It's a really good circuit, some great corners, gravel runoff areas, which of course penalises any sort of mistakes. Fabulous, really quick corner, turn 9, the uphill right-hander, turn 9, subject to crosswind, and there was a lot of talk about wind today during FP1 and FP2. Lovely change of direction out of turn 2 into turn 3. And then some really punishing corners, slower corners, hard braking, and good traction episode corners in sector 2. So lots to look forward to as we went into first practice in Barcelona, under the heading of some talk yet again of Flexi-wings and how near they are running to the regulations. On this occasion, apparently Red Bull pointing the finger at McLaren and Ferrari. I can understand the finger pointing at McLaren because McLaren are really quick. Ferrari is slightly different. I mean, Flexi-wings aren't a major deal around Monaco, and they weren't very good in Canada, as we saw. But nonetheless, McLaren presumably running a little bit more conservatively in Spain with that spotlight on them. But let's have a look at the fastest laps at the end of FP2. Don't normally go in for these red tyre, soft tyre run analyses on a Friday, but it's worth it at Barcelona because it is so close, and it's almost like a mini race in itself as we go into practice and then qualifying in Spain. So fastest of all on Friday in Barcelona, and I guess this is another reason to put it up. Not that I'm massively biased towards Lewis, it's just that we haven't had many chances to say this since Abu Dhabi 21. Lewis Hamilton for Mercedes, 13.264. George Russell did get some traffic in Sector 2, which accounted for him being down there to 13.722. He was very quick in Sectors 1 and 3, so he's right there as well. But nonetheless, it was Lewis that did the job today. So all credit to Lewis, 7 times world champion, going to Ferrari next year. A lot of talk about how quick he will be when he gets to Maranello. Well, you know, here's Lewis beginning to answer the questions. And Mercedes beginning little by little to get this car adapted to the change in circuits from one to another. A rather odd comment from James Allison, I thought, in the build-up to this race, saying that they got it wrong for so long. They didn't realise that they shouldn't focus just on slow corners at the expense of fast corners, or vice versa. It was better to have an average between the two, which, you know, that kind of comes under the heading of what Williams were doing in Australia, which is not bringing a spare chassis, sort of Formula Ford stuff. Anyway, who am I to say that about James? I mean, he's a great guy, but I thought maybe it was a quote out of context, but it seemed a bit odd anyway. But nonetheless, putting all that to one side, Mercedes definitely making progress, so there you are. Not a great day for Charles Leclerc. Didn't like the handling of the car out of the box, working away on that very early days in terms of the weekend, of course, going into Saturday and then into qualifying. But Carlos Sainz in front of his home crowd, looking good, 13.286, virtually the same time as Lewis. So that's a really good confidence booster for Carlos, and he needs confidence boosting. He shouldn't. He's doing a really good job, but he needs it, of course, because of what's happening at the end of the year, and he still hasn't done his deal for next year. All sorts of noises coming out of Audi that they are a little bit behind the 8-ball, which would mean that maybe he is looking just to run with an established team. And what established team would that be? Well, there aren't many left now, possibly Williams, but I mean, anyway, we'll see what happens there. Lando Norris, really, really good day. We'll get on to his long runs in a minute, but very, very good as well, 13.319. McLaren very quick in a straight line in FP1, trimming that down a bit in FP2. Which just shows that they got quite a big sweet spot in terms of setup now, as well as what the drivers can feel through the 4 tyres. But a very good broad basis for setup now at McLaren, and that looked really good. Lando Norris 13.3. Oscar Piastri not quite as impressive as he has been in the last couple of races, but we'll see again what happens tomorrow, and probably there was a traffic story to tell there as well. But P4, and topping one of the big stories of the day, not only because he was P4, Pierre Gasly, great lap in the Alpine Renault, but also the news that, would you believe, Flavio Briatore coming back as a special advisor to Luca De Meo, the chairman of Alpine, to bring his wisdom and his experience to the team, to change it around. I don't know. I mean, I like Flav. He's a good bloke. Used to go to my gym, and we didn't hang out, but got on with him quite well. But he was a mate of Bernie's. I mean, everything he did was Bernie and Bruno Michel, and it was all that stuff. And going in now to Alpine, where presumably they're probably thinking he did a great job with this team when it was called Benetton. But of course, virtually everybody from that era has left, and it's all new people there. So Flavio going in not knowing anybody and having been out of Formula One really since Singapore Gate, coming back in to advise. I suppose if you're really well in with Bruno Michel in F2 and F3, not an easy thing to be, then I suppose you're in quite good shape now to be looking at potentially an academy role at Alpine, because one of these things is to look at young drivers. I wouldn't have thought that is the priority at all. Their priority is to have 2 reliable Grand Prix cars that consistently not only finish in the points, but are vying for podium finishes. And yeah, we'll obviously give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll see how long it lasts. But alongside the sacking of Otmar Safnauer, who was apparently doing a very good job in terms of the record he had at Force India and then at Aston Martin, and then what he was doing at Alpine and the results he was getting at Alpine, they got rid of him, and now they're getting Flavio Briatore, who's got to be a bit of a question mark. It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, good luck to Flavio. I enjoy listening to him in interviews. Can't understand a word he says, just trying to translate it. It's really good. So anyway, welcome back to Formula One, Flavio Briatore. So Pierre Gasly, that P4. Esteban Ocon was pretty quick as well. So the Alpine looks to be quite a good car. That's one of the things this weekend. The Alpine looks to be quite good. And at the moment, we've said this a few times, but at the moment, the Steak Sauber stroke Audi, not that there's much Audi there at the moment. Well, there's none at all, but obviously that's going to be the team that Audi are going to be running in 26 onwards, looking better than they normally look as well on a Friday, at least anyway, here in Barcelona, at Barcelona. So that was the other thing. And just going back to Max, as you can see there, he was P5, slower than Pierre Gasly. Most of that is because he was unbelievably behind the 8 ball in Sector 2, which is about turn-in, obviously grip level and traction. Very, very good he was in sectors 1 and 3, which is about top speed. They did get the car much quicker in a straight line. We'll get on from where they were in FP1. We'll get on to that in a minute. They were much quicker in the afternoon. They took wing out of the car. Probably too much wing, because he was saying he was just feeling a lack of grip everywhere. So they're probably going to find a balance between where they were in FP1, where they went to an FP2, and that's what we'll see in FP3 on the Red Bull RB20. But I thought it was quite impressive watching Max through the last corner, which is a great corner now. It's very quick right-hander. There's a bump just before the apex. And because the Red Bulls generally, the RB20 can generally be run higher than its nearest opposition for the same download, if you get my drift, and top speed. The Red Bull looks so good through that last corner. I think that's going to be one of the telling factors in the race, because obviously that then gives you that top speed going down the main straight, which is where the speed trap is, by the way, just before the braking area into turn 1. And that's a really important thing on race day. But it also gives him a better position to be on top of tyre management as well, because Barcelona is really, really tough on tyres. As I say, Pirelli running the hardest compounds as well they might, because there's incredible loading going through the tyres on this circuit. So Max playing around with wing, playing around with downforce, and at the moment not anything like enough grip and balance in the mid sector of the lap, which is the slower sector. And possibly that also comes down to this business of how they have to run the car to get it to work so well on fast and medium speed corners, and this business of curb strike and the ride of the car on the slower corners. But it'll be interesting to see what they do tomorrow, and that will be a pointer as to whether Red Bull have made developments in that area since Monaco. It was hurting them still in Canada, and it may well still be hurting them tomorrow, but we'll see with the setup they run. So Max P4, and I think Sergio Perez, who looked very good in the car, I thought. Every time he went out, he looked like he was on the case and doing a good job, but he was just not very quick. And you can see how difficult that car obviously is to drive 14.0. I mean, that's a Haas Ferrari time. Fernando Alonso, yeah, Aston Martin, not really there at all today. Lance Stroll got reprimanded for missing a fan thing, and he said he had to go and see a doctor, and that's why he missed it. Obviously, he didn't go through the protocol or apologise. No surprise there, I suppose. But Fernando and Lance Stroll, not impressive in the Aston Martins on this Friday. Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, quick on the straight again, but struggling here with downforce and grip at the moment. And the two Williams, absolutely nowhere today. So that was a bit of a shock to see how slow they are around Barcelona. And now, very briefly, I'd like to welcome a new partner to our channel, TrackNinja, bringing pro-level racing data to any level of racing driver. And you can see there, TrackNinja is a lap timer and data app designed to help users improve their car and driver performance on track through analysis and innovative data. But it does so with a mobile phone, and it's incredibly simple to operate. $9.99 a month. It's actually free as a startup as well. So have a look at that. The link will be in description. And now let's go back to FP1 on Friday morning, where the speed trap results were extraordinary. Lando Norris 337, Oscar Piastri 332. Okay, you got to throw in a bit of a toe there somewhere along the line, but nonetheless, the trend is pretty clear. McLaren going into Barcelona with incredible top speed, which would imply perhaps less downforce than they certainly would have run equivalent factor in 2023. Fernando Alonso, not too bad as well. The usual suspects, Haas, Ferrari, good. Kevin Magnussen, 328. Ferrari in the ballpark there, 325 with Carlos Sainz. That's a pretty good baseline on which to be building for the rest of the weekend. And then the two Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, 324, also right there with the music. A really interesting top speed result for them to be right there with Ferrari. Putting McLaren to one side, you'd say Mercedes would be feeling pretty comfortable about that, because look where Red Bull are. Normally 2 or 3 kilometers quicker than anybody else in a straight line. But in FP1 this morning in Barcelona, Sergio Perez 322, Max Verstappen 319. I mean, that is, we haven't seen that for a long time, and it was always going to be interesting to see how they, once they'd gone through that data and looked to see where they were, how that was going to pan out for Friday afternoon. We also had some good long run results in FP1 too, after the initial runs on medium and then soft tyres. And you can see there how impressive Lando Norris was. Again, very difficult. We always say with these long runs, you can't read too much into them, but nonetheless, trends are there to be grasped. I don't think there's any doubt there that Lando Norris has got a nice balance on that McLaren. On the hard tyre, okay, look at the top speeds, 309, 311, 313, 310. If you compare that to the Mercedes, compare that to the Ferrari and the Red Bull, certainly. But the Red Bull at that point, not very quick in a straight line, so we'll keep that out of it. You'd have to say probably Lando not running the same amount of fuel. But look at the consistency of his run on the hard tyre, 19.3, 18.7, 18.5, 18.4, 18.3, 18.4. I mean, this is just brilliant stuff. This is Max Verstappen when things were really humming along over the last couple of years. Really, really good homework there by Lando Norris. Max Verstappen on the soft tyre in FP1 and then switching to the hard for a little run right at the end. Let's look at that hard. This is a direct comparison with Lando Norris. Bear in mind that the hard tyre at that point would have been a little bit newer than Lando was using, but 19.6, yeah, I mean, that's not a super quick time. But then again, look at his top speed, 301, 303. So you got to say probably running less fuel, even in relative terms at that point. But on the soft tyre, Max 20.1, 20.2, 20.4, 20.6. I mean, these are warning bells for Red Bull. I know it's only Friday, but with this, we've seen this before in weekends when it's turned out to be kind of okay for Red Bull, but nonetheless, it's been a bit of a struggle, and it looks to be that way again at the moment in Barcelona. George Russell about the same as Max there. I had George rather than Lewis because he seemed to get a cleaner run in FP1 this morning and was pretty quick on the soft tyre as well. Well, very quick on the soft tyre. 20.7, 23.0, that's obviously an anomaly. 21.0, 20.5. So he sort of, you could say, wow, right there on the Red Bull pace. Then he was in 21.0, same set of tyres, 21.0, 20.9, 21.0. Incrementally, Mercedes seem to be getting it together on a fairly regular basis now. And Carlos, compared with Lando, you got to say Lando's definitely got the advantage. Again, question mark over the amount of fuel they're running, but right there, a very impressive run by Carlos Sainz and a nice way to get into the weekend. Obviously a big pressure weekend for Carlos at his home Grand Prix. This is the last year the Spanish fans are going to see him in red. So quite an emotional time for Carlos, I think, and his family being there as well. His dad arrived this morning as well. But very good laps. I mean, very consistent. 19.2, 19.7, 19.6, 19.8, 19.9, 20.4, 20.3. I mean, why are they getting rid of this guy? I mean, really good long runs there from Carlos. It was a very different story in FP2 for Red Bull. 3.26 now the top speed for Max Verstappen. They took a lot of wing out of the car just to keep it going in terms of what they were then doing on the long runs in FP2. Again, Max out of sync in terms of tyres. He's running the medium now. Everybody else is running the soft. There were some changes towards the end of the runs. But Lewis now doing a good run on the soft tyre, 20.5, 20.1, 20.0, 20.3. Really looking as if he's enjoying his driving, looking like Lewis Hamilton in the car, looking really good in the car. Not a lot of laps, but consistent. And that was the thing that showed up actually through all the tyre range, whether it was soft or the medium. We didn't see a lot of the tyres going off the cliff today. Might have been some graining, might have been some overheating, but not in terms of going off the cliff, which is sometimes the case, of course, with the Pirellis. That's not to say it won't happen on race day. Look at Carlos Sainz now on the soft tyre. All of these runs, really impressive to watch, just as they were in FP1, 19.9, 19.8, 19.9, some very good laps there, and some pretty good top speeds. Obviously some toes towards the end there, 3.17, 3.27, but 3.01, 3.02, yeah, pretty good. And you got to say, in that sense, right there with Lando Norris. But look at Lando's run. I've been eulogizing about his consistency already in this video, but look at this in the afternoon: 20.1, 20.4, 20.1, 20.0, 19.8, 20.2, and then 3 20.1s. McLaren in the low 300s, 304, 306 through the speed trap. And now finally, let's see what Max Verstappen is doing on a long run. If anything was going to give a pointer to how this weekend is going to go, it was this specific moment when Max was out with a sort of balance on the car now, with the top speed about right, admittedly on the medium when the others are on the soft, but in theory that's a slower tyre. And look at his run. This is really eye-watering. 19.4, 19.4, 19.7, 19.5, 19.6. Ends with a 19.1. I mean, just fabulous. Just great to watch as well. Lots of traffic there, going in and out of the traffic. Lots going on today. On the soft tyre, 19.1. Basically the same time as 19.6, 19.3. So yeah, really impressive afternoon. Those long runs tend not to get a lot of focus on TV because if you look at the stopwatch, they're not going anything like as quick as they had gone, and so well, that's not very interesting. But in reality, look how close those times are, and I think they're close within the runs of the individual driver, but also with one another. So it does give a pointer, but it does show that even though Max was not quickest on the soft tyre, and we'll get onto that now, on the long run, he's looking really good. And so that was Friday in Barcelona. Very interesting day, very technical day, great circuit. I think I love the Barcelona circuit. It's going to be sad when it does, or if it does drop off the calendar. There's still some effort to try and keep it there alongside the new street race in Madrid, but for the meantime, just a wonderful circuit. A great combination of corners, lots of undulations as well. A little bit of talk about rain on Sunday, which of course will be an interesting thing after Canada, but let's see what happens tomorrow. A big thanks again to the partners of our channel, to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and now to TrackNinja. Thanks for your support. You can read all about them in the description. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, take care.